Hello everybody, welcome back to C&S Corvettes in Sarasota, Florida. This is your buddy Lyle, here with more interesting Corvette stories and information. Today I'm going to do something a little bit out of the ordinary. I don't have any products to show you. I don't have any quick tips or how-to videos for you today. Today I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to talk about one of the stories to do with Corvettes that is near and dear to my heart. Let me explain. Before I get there, go ahead and do the like, subscribe, and all the things down here to help me out. Very much appreciate that. One of my favorite places in the world is Kennedy Space Center. I'm fortunate enough to live in Florida, so it's only about 2.5 hours away. And I go there a couple of times a year just because I love the place. I love the history, I love the stories, I love all the artifacts they have there. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I took my lady love Sophia and her son Brett over with me, and we spent a full day at the Space Center looking at the Saturn V moon rocket, looking at Space Shuttle Atlantis, looking at the rocket garden, all kinds of the neat stuff that they have there that I love so much. And we were actually fortunate enough that evening to sit in the dark by the Banana River and watch a SpaceX launch at nighttime, which is also awesome. If you have never been to Kennedy Space Center, I highly recommend you go. It's only about 40 minutes east of Orlando. If you're ever in Orlando and you have a day to spare, I'm telling you, it is well worth your time. And the scale of that place, the buildings there, the fixtures, the carriers that carry the rockets themselves is just unbelievable, and it's great for the entire family. So after my visit, I was like, you know what? I need to talk to my people about the connection between NASA and the astronauts and Corvette. Now, I'm sure any of you who have been Corvette owners for a long time are probably well aware of this story, but I wanted to retell it briefly for those of you who haven't. Starting way back in 1959, the first 7 astronauts, known as the Mercury Seven, showed up for astronaut training at Cape Canaveral. Well, one of the astronauts who showed up, whose name you probably know, Alan Shepard, who was the first American in orbit, showed up in his used 1957 Corvette. And this was already his second Corvette. His first one was a 1953 that he had bought used. He and the other astronauts had a real love of fast things. Not surprising. But they loved fast cars. And what you figure out really soon is that these guys were the rock stars of their age, huge celebrities, big press junkets, everybody knew who they were, and they needed time to blow off steam. So oftentimes they would go to one of the hotels or one of the bars in Cocoa Beach and tip a few back when that was okay, and then they would take their Corvettes out to the empty roads out on the Cape, pictured here in the early 1960s, and they would race, drag races mostly, but they did some road racing as well. And it was very competitive. Obviously, these guys were all type A alpha males, and they all wanted to be the fastest and the best. So the other astronauts started getting involved with Corvettes as well. Some of the Gordon Cooper and Gus Grissom were the two most avid racers of the group, and they were constantly trying to improve their Corvettes to beat their buddies in the drag races, this, that, and the other thing. Now, the whole relationship, official quote-unquote relationship with Corvette began when Alan Shepard touched down after his historic launch in 1961. GM gifted him a brand new white 1962 Corvette. Here you see a picture of Alan with said car. It had a custom futuristic interior and was one of a kind. But after the government and NASA got wind of this, they said, that's great for you, Al, but you are a federal employee, as are the rest of the astronauts, and you cannot be seen to promoting any individual product or brand. So they put the kibosh on any more free cars for the astronauts. So enter a guy named Jim Rathman. Jim Rathman was a former Indy 500 race car driver. He had won the Indy 500, as a matter of fact, a few years previously. And he now owned a Chevrolet dealership, oddly enough, right in Cocoa Beach. He talked with Ed Cole, the GM at the time, and started saying, hey, what can we do for these guys to get them in Corvettes? Because they're on camera like 24 hours a day. What can we do to get them cars? We can't give them to them. So between Ed and Jim, they determined that a fair deal to make to these astronauts was they could lease any GM vehicle, specifically the Corvette, for $1 a year. Now, as you can imagine, if you were given this opportunity, you would probably choose to lease a Corvette for $1 a year. In fact, 6 of the original Mercury 7 astronauts did lease a Corvette. The only one who did not was John Glenn, who chose to get a station wagon for his family instead. And if you know anything about the stories coming from the Mercury 7 and the early NASA program, John Glenn was always the outlier. He was a bit more mature and a bit more uptight than the rest of the guys. He didn't party, he didn't drink, he didn't do any of those things. And that's probably why he went on to become so successful in the area of politics. So now that the guys have their Corvettes at $1 a year, they started getting creative. In fact, for the Apollo 12 crew, obviously the mission after we landed on the moon, astronauts Conrad, Gordon, and Bean had 3 identical cars leased for them, and they had them painted matching colors, gold and black, to match their lunar module. And there are a bunch of press pictures that were taken. These guys loved their cars, and the press loved the idea that they all had matching Corvettes, so there's lots of images. Alan Bean's gold Corvette is still around. It has been shown at NASA, it's been shown at Smithsonian, and at the National Corvette Museum. Another crew, Apollo 15 crew, Irwin, Warden, and Scott, all got different color Corvettes, but they all had the matching stripes on them, so that anytime these guys were out and about in Cocoa or on the Cape, everybody knew they were part of the Apollo 15 crew. NASA and Corvettes go back a long way, obviously, and honestly, if you go out to Kennedy Space Center, you'll still see quite a few Corvettes there. NASA staff, employees, everybody still digs the Corvette. You see quite a few of them out there. In fact, even the astronauts are still very much into Corvettes. Here's a picture of astronaut Scott Kelly with his C7 not too long ago. I think it's fair to say that Corvettes will be linked to the space program forever, and people are still interested in that relationship. In fact, just a couple of years ago, James May, from the famous group of guys from Top Gear and the Grand Tour, did a bit on an episode of the Grand Tour where he drove Neil Armstrong's original 1967 Corvette on the shuttle landing strip at Cape Canaveral, and that was a really, really cool episode. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I think that these stories and the relationship between Corvette and the space program is absolutely awesome. I love the stories. People are still interested in it today. I don't think it was a bad thing at all for anybody involved. And one of my favorite little stories, which I'll share with you here to close, is at Alan Shepard's memorial service when he passed away in, I think it was 1998. Gordon Cooper, who was one of the other drag racers, admitted to Al, posthumously of course, that he had changed the gear ratio in the differential in Alan Shepard's car without him knowing, so that he could continue to beat Al Shepard in drag races, and he kind of tongue-in-cheek apologized to him posthumously, which I think is just awesome and very fitting for this group of guys. I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope you enjoyed some of the images. If you guys have additional information or images you want to share with me about the astronauts and the Corvettes, please do it down below in the comment section. Anything I can learn about this story to make my telling of the story better, I would love to hear. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you again soon.